The Bills beat the Chiefs, causing some theatrics on Kansas City's sideline. The Cowboys defeated the Eagles, causing some speculation. Is this their year? The Lions lose yet again, and this one to the Bears. This is the Fumblerooski podcast. Welcome back to the Fumblerooski podcast. I'm Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros and Chris Costich. This is we are recapping week 14, and this is about as eventful a week as I have seen in my recent memory with covering the league. So I teased some of the topics that we are going to do today, but there are some that we won't be able to touch on quite as much that are just unbelievable stories. First of all, the Jaguars, they lost to the Browns 27-31. Yet another win for the Browns with a backup quarterback. And Trevor Lawrence doesn't look like the same guy coming off that high ankle sprain. The Texans got their crap beat in by the Jets. And don't look now, but the Texans are starting to get a little injury prone. They lost another wide receiver this week. And things might be starting to fall apart on that end. The Ravens, 37-31, they win in a thriller over the Rams. I told you guys on Friday, this looks like a trap game, and it was this close to being that. Unbelievable game by these two teams. We're also going to cover the Lions, losing another game to the Bears. 28-13, it wasn't close, which makes it even more troubling for a team that we thought was going to be a Super Bowl contender. Cowboys, this could be their year, man. This could be it. On top of that, we're going to go with what we're going to start with today, which is the Bills beating the Chiefs 20-17. So the way, it's not the fact that they lost, which is a story in itself. It's the way it happened. So the Bills, first of all, they almost shut out the Chiefs 14-0 until the very end of the fourth quarter, which is something that is very unheard of. The Chiefs did pick it up, and they did take the they did tie it in the fourth quarter. However, the Bills came out on top, but again, it's how it happened. So it was the very last drive of the game, and in a miraculous play. So it was a first down to Travis Kelce. Kelce laterals it to Kadarius Toney, and Toney runs it in for the touchdown. It was called back because upon further review, on the replay, you could clearly see this. Toney was offsides. Now, the dispute has not been whether or not he was offsides. It has been that typically over our league's history, the ref would give you a warning and say, you're offsides, get onsides real quick. There was no warning. However, they have started to crack down on it. It's been called 12 times this year, meaning that there is some changes being made now. They're not giving you warnings. They're expecting you to line up on sides. So they did make the call. It was called back. The Bills ended up winning, and the way the Chiefs responded to it. So Patrick Mahomes went off on the sidelines immediately following this call. And that's not the issue. The issue came where during the immediate post game when all the players were on the field, when all the players were on the field, he went up to Josh Allen and he was still complaining instead of congratulating him, he did hug him, he did dap him up. Instead of congratulating to him, he continued to complain about it. And then during the post-game press conference, he complained about it even more, admitting that it was a penalty, by the way, but also saying that they shouldn't have called it, which is, I think we can all agree, just because you want to call a penalty to not be called doesn't mean that it shouldn't be called. On top of that, so Andy Reid did admit, he said, yeah, Kadarius Toney did not check with the referee before that he was offsides. He did not ask. Kadarius Toney has not said anything either. He has not made a comment about this, which should speak volumes, by the way. But I just wanted to get you guys' thoughts on it. Chris, why don't you start us off? What the hell happened today on Sunday night?
Just the Chiefs got a taste of their own medicine. They just forgot how to act, apparently. Look, and there was people in the comment section that was saying, oh, I played football. The ref is supposed to. I played football too. And if you played football, you know that as a quarterback, every single time that we went up to the line, the receivers were going up and throwing a thumbs up saying, hey, am I good? And that it's not the ref's job to tell you if you're good or not. You have to ask them if you're good. They don't tell the D linemen if they're lined up off sides to take a step back or two. And they're not going to do the same thing for you as a receiver unless you ask them. So, yeah, Andy Reid. The thing with Andy Reid is that he was critical of the refs on Sunday, but yesterday he did say that Kadarius Toney needs to check with the official, and that's the main thing, is that Kadarius Toney once again screwed up and seems to have Mahomes. Like, as much as Mahomes has been very uncritical of his receivers this year, this was the game that he really should have been critical towards them, especially with Kadarius Toney's screw up. I think it's CJ said this the other night too. If this was any other quarterback, they'd be getting put through the ringer like no other. And if we're supposed to be putting Mahomes and Brady in the same conversation, like, there was a clip that I just saw from the 2019 season from when the Patriots and the Chiefs played. That was the N'Keal Harry stepping out of bounds game when he didn't step out of bounds, and Brady was asked about it, and Brady said, yeah, well, it's a tough call, but at the end of the day, you shouldn't be putting yourself into that situation where you're down by 3 and you need a drive to score a touchdown or a field goal to tie/win the game. You shouldn't be putting yourselves in that position to begin with, where you end up getting screwed over down the line. And at that point, you get screwed over. How do you respond after that? More times than not, teams that are on the wrong end of it do lose, but it's how you respond after that. And the Chiefs didn't respond well.
Yeah, listen, they didn't respond well at all. And I'll give Mahomes and Reid this. We have never seen anything like this from them. In the time that these two have been paired together, we have not seen this. So I'm going to give Mahomes the pass for this, because he was obviously caught up in the heat of the moment, and he said everything that he said. I hope he responds well to this, and I do hope that he comes out and owns up to all of this, because I mean, you have to. If you agree or disagree with the call, that's one thing. The way you react to it is another. So if he could just come out and say, listen, sorry I acted the way I did. I'm highly competitive. In the heat of the moment, I said all the things that I said. I still disagree with the call, but the way I responded, there's no excuse for that. That would be great. We'll see if he says nothing, that's fine too. I think actions speak louder than words too. But I think we're getting on Mahomes a little too much now, to the point where he's a baby. He's always been this way. He's a sore loser. He's never done this before. So I think we can take a little step back and pump the brakes. Because the way he acted, he never does this. In fact, most of the time, he's a good sport about things. So I will give him that.
And that's what I mean is that he, like, even with all the bad play from the receivers and whatnot, he still kept his mouth shut about the receiver play and saying, hey, you know, we just got to play better in general. He's never really one to lash out like that until Sunday. So for all we know, it's probably the frustration of his receivers sucking this entire season, all pent up. It finally just came out on that Sunday evening.
There's a strong possibility of that because I mean he has been in a tough position. Like, and I do think a lot of it has to do with his contract. His contract is so big that they can't invest in big time wide receivers. That's the reason Tyreek Hill was out. That's the reason they couldn't give him anything better than Juju Smith-Schuster. And I mean, there's the issue. Like, I mean, you've got to be able to surround your superstar with some talent. Tom Brady was able to get away with it for some time with not being surrounded by talent, but eventually he was even out the door. So you got to surround your superstar with some talent. I know Travis Kelce is an elite tight end, but you got to give him more than that. That's not enough.
Adam, may I say something?
Sure.
Why, thank you. Honestly, the reason people are going so hard on Mahomes is because he's never done this before. And it's not Mahomes himself that bothers me. It's just, it was the way he was carrying himself. It was the way that he continued to pout. And if you listen to his reaction, the excuse that the ref should tell the receiver is a flimsy one. Because, I'm sorry, if you are a grown man playing this sport, which you are paid millions of dollars for, and you have to rely on a referee to tell you whether or not you're offsides, then you may as well hang up the cleats and retire right now. And let me tell you something. It's not just Mahomes' reaction. It's Andy Reid's reaction, who called that penalty, and I quote, a bit embarrassing for the league. And how Reid said in the post-game presser that, once again, the ref should have told Tony. Well, Andy, I have news for you. You love cheeseburgers, so maybe you should shove a cheeseburger in your mouth before you say another stupid thing and waste some of our brain cells. Because let me tell you something. You're a coach. You're supposed to be the adult in the room. And the fact that you gave into this is sad. Furthermore, I want to touch on what Chris Costich mentioned because he's correct. The number of offensive offsides penalties have jumped this year because the refs aren't there to baby you. They're there to enforce the rules. And the worst part about all this is the fans, the Chiefs fans. They've reacted with 3 Ds: deflection, delusion, and denial. And look, you've seen it, and they're parroting the same excuse, but here's where the deflection part comes in. They're like, well, Tom Brady always got a pass for acting this way. When Brady did it, it was passion. It's like, first of all, the NFL media is so on Mahomes' side because whenever Brady did something like that, he'd get called a crybaby. He'd get called out. And if anything, Mahomes, I think, just from a media standpoint, has gotten off fairly easily. Then there's just the delusion. And here's something for you. Ready for this? NFL Hall of Famer Warren Sapp went viral for saying, he actually wasn't offsides. There's a handful of Chiefs fans and a handful of sports folk that are saying, oh, look at this angle. He was totally not offsides. Give me a break. Chiefs, shut up, take the L, and move on.
What I hear most is actually the not whether or not he was offsides. It was number one, the ref didn't let him go. The refs didn't let it go, or they didn't let Tony know. It was also the other thing. The very next play, they claimed that Von Miller was offsides. Warren Sapp also debunked that because you can, first of all, you can make a case Von Miller doesn't even pass the blue line. Second of all, the blue line is actually very inaccurate. If you look at the angle of the play, the blue line is one spot, and then a half yard back, the ball is there. So you can't look at the blue line.
Yeah.
People keep on forgetting that blue line is not official.
Announcers,
It's from some kid from
broadcasters-
It is from some kid from CBS who's working graphics that day. It's not official.
Broadcasters literally have to remind people that those lines are not official. The first down marker is not official. The freaking target line isn't official. The line of scrimmage is not official. Nothing's official. Everything's on the field.
You hear it routinely. Remember, folks, this line is not official. Whatever is official is on the field. But they keep going with look at the line. Look at the line. Don't look at the line. Look at the ball.
Know or don't care.
And also, I just going on. I lost my train of thought, but yeah.
I think
Listen,
something that we should say though is props to the Bills because it looks like they were dead in the water a couple weeks ago. They fired Ken Dorsey, and it seems that it's worked out for them. Josh Allen has, granted, he had an interception. He still had a couple turnovers here and there, but the way that this Bills offense has been moving the ball around has been a lot better than what we saw during that cold stretch that they were on.
Yeah. And I do remember what I was going to say. I do not think the media has been kind to Mahomes during these past few days. I just don't think so. And I don't think the fans have either. Have you seen that on our reel that we posted?
I didn't say the fans were. I said the media has. I mean, they've said a few things, but it's nothing to the level, especially when the fans have mentioned how they're like, they would give Brady a pass. There is nothing in history to even justify saying that. It's not true. And Costich mentioned what I said, too, about how if this was Purdy or Allen or Hurts or Lamar, they would get dragged through the ringer. I actually think Mahomes is getting out pretty light from a media standpoint. Fans, not so much.
It's been all over ESPN. They've been coming at Mahomes. Whether you think it would be better or worse than other players, that's one thing. But Mahomes is certainly getting an earful for what he has been doing, and I hope he responds to it. I hope he responds either by his actions or by his words, and saying, "Look, sorry, things got out of hand. I'll do better next time." And then the actions, of course, as well. All right. I want to move on. We have to get to this Cowboys game because it does not get talked about enough. The Cowboys have now beaten the Eagles in 3 of their last 4 matchups. This one wasn't close, 33-13. We're going to get to that next. And if possibly the Cowboys have grown a little bit into an actual contender this year. How are things different? We'll talk about that next. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
Welcome back to the Fumblerooski podcast. Adam Wright, Chris Costich, CJ Medeiros. Okay, so the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football put an absolute beatdown on the Eagles, 33-13. This was an absolute beatdown. So, as I mentioned before this show, or at least before the segment, the Cowboys have had the Eagles number, and that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Out of their last 4 matchups, actually out of their last 5, 4 of their last 5, and the one that they lost, Dak Prescott still threw for 374 yards, 3 touchdowns, and they very nearly won that game as well. So they have been cruising through these Eagles teams over the past couple of years. So when you look at that, and also the way that the Cowboys at home absolutely demolished them, and also, by the way, took over the NFC East lead. Are things different now? Chris, I'll let you start off.
They're definitely different. You kidding me? I mean, the big thing with Dak Prescott, obviously, is his turnovers. That's one of his main criticisms, right? But you look at how he's played this year. He's only thrown 3 interceptions once, and that was in that disastrous game against San Francisco. Other than that, he has not thrown a multiple interception game at all this year. He's now 4 games in a row where he hasn't thrown an interception. Last one that he threw was against the Giants, where they won 49-17, and it didn't even matter because he threw for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's got 11 touchdown passes in the last 4 games. He's got to be an MVP candidate at this point. Defense has shown up, and CeeDee Lamb is playing out of his mind. He's just unstoppable right now. It's kind of unreal. Last 5 games for Dak, 15 touchdowns, 1 interception, almost 1,500 yards, and a near 70% completion percentage. Like, I'm not a big Dak guy, but it's hard to say
These are MVP level stats, man.
It's not. I can't say that. I have to say he's an MVP candidate. I can't say that he's not. It's like, I'd like to see it be a non-quarterback this year. This would definitely be the year to do it. But if you're going to give it to a quarterback, it's got to be Dak. But in general, looking at the Eagles side real quick, man, you got back-to-back weeks now where you got embarrassed on national TV by now debatably the 2 best teams in the NFC. And we're talking about how conservative they've been, focusing more on the run game and whatnot. And that's why it hurts his stats passing-wise are down. But it finally caught up to him. That secondary as well has been suspect. So suspect the last however many weeks. And they've been exposed on back-to-back weeks. And this is supposed to also be a really good defensive line. And they're barely doing anything. Yeah, they got 3 sacks. But in general, they're not really doing a whole lot.
CJ?
Oh, boy. The Cowboys. Ain't that something? Honest to God, I did not think they were legit. But last night was a statement win. It was. And Dak Prescott, I saw as the leader of the MVP ladder. Although I, like Chris Costich, think it should probably go to either Christian McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill. But if it is going to be a quarterback, it should be Dak, and anything else is probably just Cowboys hatred. And I'm not known to defend them, but I will admit that credit needs to be given where credit is due. That wide receiver duo of CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks is great. Tony Pollard's a darn good running back. Dak is playing the best football ever. And that defense led by Micah Parsons, Trayvon Diggs, and Stephon Gilmore. Oh, man, it's putting the clamps on people. And they are the best team in the NFC East, and it's showing. And even though, just from a talent standpoint, Philly might have a bit of an edge, it's starting to look like that talent might solely be on paper. I mean, it sucks to say, because I don't think really anyone outside of Dallas likes the Cowboys, but it's true. And for Philly, real quick, I do want to address something that I said last episode. So remember what I said, and I've also said this to Adam and Chris and Tuck and so on off camera, about my streak snap theory? Well,
Yes, yep.
Oh, well, it's 2 straight weeks, Philly, and you've been punched in the mouth in prime time, not once, but twice. So now what? You were running your mouth. You got, like I said, you got smacked by the Niners, and you just got smacked by your division rival in the Cowboys. Things are falling apart there. And like I said, when you get punched in the mouth, and now when it happens again, this might be a mentality question. It really might be. They're starting to hemorrhage games a bit. You know what I mean? And if you lose and you can't stop the bleeding, like from a mentality standpoint, that is a worrisome place for your team. And I want to ask this off the top of your head. Does anyone know Philly's schedule.
I got it up right here.
Oh, thank you. So who do they play next?
They play Seattle next week, which I want to bring up a stat.
Sure, bring up a stat.
I'm going to say Eagles are going to win next week, and this is based off of I mentioned this to you guys before. The teams the week after playing the 49ers are 1-11 this year, and that includes the Eagles' loss last week.
Well. So, yeah, Philly is going to need a bounce-back game soon.
But so after the Seahawks, you got the Giants twice and the Cardinals.
So, yeah, from a talent standpoint, if you're a Philly fan, there is no reason you should lose any of those games. Even if you lose one, I won't say it's panic time. I might have to raise an eyebrow at you. But Dallas, I think Dallas is heating up at the right time, because for the best bit of my time here, let's take a look at their schedule. Up next, they have the Bills, who are coming off a statement win against the Chiefs. Then you've got the high-flying Miami Dolphins, who may or may not be frauds. That's a story for another day. You have the Lions, who need a reset of their own, and then you have the Commanders, who are just the Commanders. So you've got 2 really tough games, potentially 3 really tough games coming up. Well, Dallas, now's your chance to put all the haters to bed once and for all.
My other thing I want to point out with Dallas, they've been incredible at home. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. They're 7-0 at home right now, and they'll probably be 8-0, maybe. Their last home game is against the Lions, week 17. Primetime game as well. Seeing how the Lions are playing, that might be a Cowboys win, so we could see the Cowboys going 8-0. My problem potentially is going to be how they do on the road. 3 of the next 4 are on the road, and they are putting up significantly less points than they do at home on the road. And they're also giving up more points on average than they are getting points on the road compared to at home. So that is probably going to be my one concern. So they better hope to God that they can that the 49ers lose a game or 2, or maybe a game, and the Cowboys win out so they can get that 1 seed, so they don't have to worry about playing on the road. But that's just me.
I think the biggest difference with the Cowboys this year is that they have an actual shutdown corner, not just a corner who's a ball hawk, right? They have Darren Bland, which is great. He's kind of their new Trevon Diggs, who's out with an ACL tear.
Well, Darren Bland, he's got all these interceptions and pick sixes, but he gets fucking beat.
That's my point.
Happened to Trevon Diggs before.
You've got Stephon Gilmore, who can erase wide receivers, and you have Darren Bland, who can create the turnovers. They're a great pairing. And when you have those two, and then on top of that, past the secondary, you also have a front 7 that's among the best in the league at getting to the quarterback. That's a very good combination that is going to serve you well during the playoffs. Because in the past, they've had good secondaries. They've had solid secondaries. They never had a corner who could shut guys down, where if the quarterback isn't getting sacked or being rushed, then they're going to have a field day getting to all these corners, because the corners aren't good at actually covering you. They just create turnovers. And it's harder to create turnovers if the quarterback isn't rushed. So I think that's a big difference. And also on the offensive side, they have a better passing game than they have in a long time. CeeDee Lamb is coming into his own. And also Brandon Cooks, who has postseason experience, is showing that he's not what he used to be, but he's still a productive wide receiver too. And they're leaning on that passing game. Biggest point of them all. They're leaning on the passing game rather than trying to get the running game going with Ezekiel Elliott, who's now gone. And Tony Pollard isn't a bell cow back. He's a good back. He's a solid back, but not good enough so that they can center their whole offense around him. That's a good thing, actually, because now they have turned into a pass-first offense. They actually lean on CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks and Jalen Ferguson. which is a huge, huge plus. That's something that they have not done. They should not have been run first for all these years. They should have been a passing offense. They are finally doing that. And that is why I said all offseason, things could be different on this show. I have said it all offseason. Things could be different. They have really restructured this team. I got laughed off set every single time. Who's laughing now? Who is laughing now? 10-3, baby. How about them Cowboys?
Yeah, whatever. I will say this too.
Well, I guess a broken clock is right twice.
Yeah. Never mind. I thought I had something and then I couldn't find where it was. All right.
No, you should run for Senate.
Okay.
I was gonna say something about how looking at past teams with a top 5 offense and top 5 defense, because that's what the Cowboys are right now in terms of in terms of points scored. Or actually, I did just have it. I'm such an idiot. The last team having a top 5 offense and top 10 defense or top 5 offense and top 5 defense in terms of points scored, I will say this hasn't been the greatest thing in the world. There's only been 2 teams with a top 5 offense and top 5 defense in the last 10 years that have won the Super Bowl. And that was the 2016 Patriots and the 2017 Eagles. So if you're thinking of a Cowboys Super Bowl win, maybe pump the brakes a little bit, but it's not like it's out of the realm of I'm not going to say that anymore because I keep screwing it up. It's not entirely impossible for the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl, but history says otherwise.
All right. We'll see how it goes. This is going to be an interesting postseason. A lot of new teams in the race. A lot of teams that are better than they have in the postseason in the past. But we're going to move on. We're going to go on to the Lions, who are facing a little bit of a cold streak and may not be as great as we thought they are this year. But could that give them some repercussions down the road? This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins! Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
Welcome back to the Fumblerooski podcast. Adam Wright, Chris Costich, CJ Medeiros. Okay, we go from one upset to another. And this one was also a division rival game, kind of like the NFC East. But at least the Cowboys are a really good team. The Lions here lost 13-28 to the Chicago Bears. And they up until yesterday or the other day were in contention for a top 5 pick. They still are because of the Panthers pick, but we're not counting that right now because this one they actually have control over, the one that they actually have. They're now 5-8. So they kind of hurt themselves there, but they did beat their division rival Detroit Lions, who are now 9-4. And this is a team that now they've lost 2 of their last 3. And the past 2 games that they've actually won were not against good teams. And they were all 1-score games. They had to claw their way out of it. So we were really, really mistaken about this Lions team. It looks like maybe they prove us wrong again. Maybe they flip the switch and come postseason time, they blow doors with every team. Right now, it looks horrible, and we were very much mistaken about how good this team really is. But I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on it.
CJ, I'll let you go first.
All right. I don't want to say it, but from a roster standpoint, nothing looks terribly wrong. I mean, their injury report isn't loaded. I mean, they haven't really, their roster's been roughly the same for a bit. I mean, I know they lost CJ Gardner-Johnson earlier in the year, but unless I'm forgetting something, it's like, so I don't know. I feel like this might be coaching. Not going to lie to you. Because they're doing an opposite. Remember how last year they started out abysmally, then they really started heating up? This year, they started out hot, and now they're just fizzling out. And part of me wonders if the Lions peaked too early. Because here's the thing. Once you reach that level of dynamic excellence, it is incredibly hard to maintain. And once you reach the top, there's nowhere else to go but down. And I keep mentioning how if you get punched in the mouth, you gotta pick yourself up by the bootstraps and keep going. But if you ask me, this team hasn't been right since Baltimore, where they rolled up to Baltimore and the Ravens blew their doors off by 32 points. You bounce back with a nice, albeit unconvincing win against the Raiders. You had a nice, albeit once again, unconvincing win in a shootout against the Chargers. You had another one-score game against the Bears where you snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. You lost to the Packers. What was that on Thanksgiving? Yeah.
Yep.
The Thanksgiving curse is real. Then you beat the lowly New Orleans Saints by one score. And the Bears just got revenge. So here's the thing. How many times have I said this on this show this season? There is a difference between a win and a convincing win. And I keep saying it because it's true. You got one in the win column, but there's some strings attached. There's questions. And right now you're looking mighty vulnerable. And here's the thing. Now there's going to be a Saturday football game on the 16th because this is where Saturday football creeps in for some reason. Always does late in the year.
I don't know. I don't hate it, but it's.
I do.
Sorry.
It's because bowl season hasn't started yet.
I was going on a side tangent, but I don't hate it. It's.
Yeah, to each their own. But the way I see it, you're going to be hosting the Denver Broncos, who themselves are eyeing a playoff spot. You're going to have the Vikings at home, who the Vikings are going to be starting Nick Mullins this week. It's a game you should win. But, hey, Adams mentioned trap games before, and he's correct. Then you will venture to Jerryland to face the Dallas Cowboys, which that is going to be scary. And then you're going to be hosting the Vikings. So these games are technically winnable. It's going to be a tall order. But if you go 2-2, you might have just run out of steam.
My big problem here is the defense for the Lions. I mean, obviously, there's problems on the offensive side of the ball. I feel like Jared Goff, there's turnovers. Jared Goff also just seems like he's holding on to the ball a little too long at times. But defensively, you look at the last four of the last five, the Lions have given up 28 points or more against some pretty bad offenses. Chargers, yeah, they have weapons. But, the only reason why the Lions even won that game is because the Chargers defense sucks. The Bears, they left 26 points to Justin Fields. Packers, they left 29 points. The Saints, I don't know how you let up 28 points to the Saints in general, to Derek freaking Carr. And the Bears last week, they gave up 28 points. And so that's my big concern with the Lions. And I think they had the Broncos next week. I feel like that's going to be more of a slug it out type of game. It's not going to be as high scoring because the Broncos offense still is kind of, they haven't completely figured it out. They're still finding their way. So I think that's going to be more of a slug it out type of game with how good the Broncos defense has been.
Yeah.
But if they lose that game, they're in trouble. They're already a little bit in trouble, but I said this last week. If they lose one or two games in this stretch, in this This is prior to the Bears game. If they lose 1 or 2 games, then we will have to probably say that this Lions team is in trouble.
I mean, I think they're in trouble already. And I honestly think it comes down to the quarterback. I mean, it feels like every other game now he's throwing multiple interceptions. And that's not offensive play calling. That's just bad quarterback play. And I did like Jared Goff going into this year. I thought, yes, he needs a lot of help, but he has that help. And he's already proven that he can get to a Super Bowl with all of these elements around him: the coaching, the offense, the running game, the offensive line. He's had all of those things, and he's still not doing well. That's not on anything else but the quarterback. So I think we were just mistaken, or maybe I was just mistaken on Jared Goff. I thought he could be better than he actually has been with weapons around him, and he just hasn't been. He's not even a Pro Bowl level quarterback, let alone an all-pro quarterback or any just Super Bowl winning quarterback in general. He's made it to one, but it looks like that was just a flash in the pan.
Yeah, I mean, Jared Goff everyone was saying MVP candidate for Jared Goff halfway through the season, and now we're in the second half of the season, and he hasn't lived up to those claims. It's probably the best way you can really look at it right there.
Yeah.
Let's look at his stats from the last 5, because stats from the last 5 games. 1,275 yards, 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Doesn't say, I can't say anything about fumbles, but 64.5 completion percentage. Where is it? Oh, now it's giving me career stats. That's great. That's not what I want. But that goes to the point that you're saying, Adam, that it feels like that he's just throwing multiple picks time and time again. And the quarterback play has not been there at all.
He has 10 on the year.
On top of other things, of course.
Which is, with still 4 games left in the season, not good.
Yeah.
I mean, 10, that's just pushing it. Also, I'm pretty sure you can find the fumble statistics in rushing stats. Just a heads up, if that's what you were looking for.
No, I know.
I know there was one game where he lost 3 fumbles, so we know he's had an issue with those kinds of turnovers too this year. So the guy's he's turning the ball over like it's nobody's business. And he shouldn't be doing that, because he's supposed to be a game managing quarterback who's has decent arm talent and can manage the ball well, who can take care of it. He's done anything but that lately, which is a huge problem, and it's killing this team. All right, I want to move on. We're going to get to Chris's top 3, bottom 3 for week 14, and also the fan box. Who is your offensive player of the year? That's next. This is the Fumblerooski podcast. Welcome back to the Fumblerooski podcast. Adam Wright, Chris Costich, CJ Medeiros. We have reached our week 14 top 3, bottom 3 by Chris Costich. Chris, take it away.
Start with the top 3. Decided to do something similar to last week with the putting 2 teams on here, but I'm just going to do a whole game in general. Ravens versus Rams. Both offenses just performing at a high level despite the bad weather. And you mentioned this before, Adam. It just poor weather. Ground was awful. Rained basically the whole game. and somehow both teams were able to put up 30-plus points. On top of that, Puka Nacua, probably the catch of the year candidate right there. Moving on, Browns. Here's a stat. Joe Flacco is now 12-1 in Cleveland. And
even past his prime and playing as a backup, that guy is still owning him.
Joe Flacco is elite. He's elite. Probably not elite right now, but man.
2012 call. They wanted your argument, buddy.
Oh, jeez.
Hey, a former president said he was elite. Said he has a
Yeah.
ring. He has the arm to back it up.
And that's the thing, is that Joe Flacco shows up when it matters most. And that's what you need from a guy like Joe Flacco. And I think that, I don't know if we should expect more like that from what we saw last week, but could be enough to get him to a playoff push.
He's on their practice squad now. The Patriots should look at signing him to there with the way their quarterback position is played.
Yeah. Well, Joe Flacco's starting the rest of the season, so.
Wasn't he just put on the practice squad?
No, I saw reports Stefanski's having him start the rest of the season.
Huh.
Maybe something changed.
Yeah.
Just you can continue.
Well, he got raised from the practice squad prior to last week. Or I'm going to have to, Adam, fact check me for that. Bears, going to round out the top three with the Bears. The defense has been very underrated this recent stretch. You look at the game against the Lions, per se. The D-line in general, especially the running game, granted, they did give up 140 yards on the ground, but they got 4 sacks on Jared Goff. It's a very underrated defense, and with those potential top 5 picks, they could end up being pretty good next year, depending on how they play around with the draft. Leave it to you two.
Adam, I'll let you go first.
You can make a case for either of the two top teams for the Rams and the Ravens, because especially like you brought up this point and I didn't think about it. It was in bad weather and it was played like it was a good weather game. Like it was a dome, like we were playing in a dome or something. Matthews, both of the quarterbacks combined threw for 6 touchdown passes and over 600 passing yards. Like they actually killed it. Kyron Williams, 114 yards. Cooper Kupp flashing his 2021 self, 115 yards and 1 touchdown. He can clearly coexist with Puka Nacua, who came into his own with 84 yards himself. I mean, this was an unbelievable game. Now, this had some playoff implications for both sides, so you can't really call it a moral victory for the Rams. And the Ravens definitely still needed to win this game because they need to keep pace with that number 1 seed in the AFC that remains competitive. But that was, I mean, this game, I have no complaints. I was watching this game and I don't think I've been so entertained in a football game this all season.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off that, just the fact that the Rams offense was able to just perform to the level that they performed against the Ravens defense, which is a top 5 defense in the league this year, and for how much the Rams offense has struggled, especially in the last 5 games. So this is definitely I would say a Sean McVay masterclass game from him, despite the loss. And in a very entertaining way to end the game as well, with the punt return for a touchdown to end it.
Yep. Chris,
Yeah.
CJ?
You know something? We were talking about the draft earlier, and I do want to expand on that because you mentioned, how they have a pick and stuff. This is going to be the first time since Jared Goff selection that the Los Angeles Rams are going to have a first-round pick. Imagine what they can do with it. They've got a few needs to fill up, and if they hit on this, they could very well land a next star because I have all the confidence in their GM lets need. I do.
I mean, considering that he picked up Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams in the late rounds, like, geez.
Absolutely.
What can he do with this loaded draft class? Man. It's possible. I mean, it seems like they're making a playoff push. So this isn't going to be an early first round pick, but just the fact that they have a first round pick for the first time since the year 2016.
Yeah.
Almost 8 years ago. That's just insane to me. Yeah. That's all the thoughts I have for top 3 though.
How funny would it be if we all end up eating crow because they traded again?
Oof.
That'd be wild.
Damn. They really
unironically, that'll be funny. Unironically, that would be very, very funny.
They really hate first round picks.
CJ, you got anything else you want to add before we go to the bottom?
Nope.
All right. Bottom 3. Keeping the same vibes. Vikings versus Raiders somehow was worse than the Chargers versus Patriots game. Granted, both teams actually did move the ball compared to the Chargers-Patriots game a little bit. But in terms of what the final score was, being 3-0.
Baseball score.
It's a baseball score, a hockey score. It's
a high-scoring hockey score is what that is.
Yeah.
On one side, by the way.
Yeah. But the Josh Dobbs run is officially over. Nick Mullins is going to be the starter the rest of the way. Now that he's back off of IR. And Josh Dobbs in general just had such a poor game to end as well. And it started with that Bears Monday night game as well. And Josh Dobbs this past week, granted, he did get sacked 5 times, but he went 10 for 23, 63 yards.
Jefferson's gone again too.
With a QBR of 17.7. And as you mentioned, Adam, Jetta is gone. We'll get away from that catastrophe. Dolphins, they had a 14-point lead with 4 minutes left in the game. And they blew it to the Titans. They blew it! And
I think it was less than 4.
Less
than
like
2 minutes.
Regardless, and the Dolphins got held to 13 points through 3 quarters against an abysmal Titans defense. Let's not forget about that. And Tyreek Hill also being hurt for most of that game. I don't care. Because now your whole offense should be good enough where Tyreek Hill shouldn't matter. But that also just shows you how much Tyreek Hill means to that offense, because their play calling in general it is so much different when Tyreek Hill isn't on the field. And you even saw on their last possession too, being every time that Tyreek Hill was not on the field, they're basically running the ball. And the Titans on the Dolphins, well, it was the Dolphins' second to last drive when they were trying to kill clock. The Dolphins were just running it out, and the Titans were just selling out. And the Dolphins just continued to not have Tyreek Hill on the field. Have him out there as a decoy for all I care. You got to do something to help yourself out. Help yourself out in the run game for all I care.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Last but not least, the Eagles. You got embarrassed back-to-back weeks now on national TV. Last week to the best team in the NFL, debatably, and this week to your biggest rival. And that's all I got.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Thoughts from you fellas.
Thoughts on the list that you put out. The Dolphins. The biggest winner of this game was not the Titans. It was Tyreek Hill in his MVP case. As soon as that guy left the field, the Dolphins were a completely different football team. And just imagine if the Chiefs had a wide receiver like that. I think the Chiefs with Tyreek Hill would be legendary. Pairing him up with Tyreek Hill. Too bad it never happened.
Yeah. And the Titans themselves could have been a top 3 candidate as well. In this game in general was definitely a game of the week candidate in terms of the Titans making their big comeback. And Will Levis, 327 yards. He only got sacked once. And Adam, you were pointing this out earlier too. This streak of the Dolphins losing, they give up 3 or more sacks. Dolphins gave up 5 sacks last night.
Yep. The only losses that the Dolphins have this year are games where they have allowed 3 or more sacks. Tua cannot win when he's on his ass. That is
No, he can't.
No.
That's just canon.
I also want to say that this game also kind of kicked me in the nuts because I was well on my way to winning in fantasy. Raheem Mostert had just gotten his second touchdown in my flex spot on my roster. 2 touchdowns, 96 yards from him. He now has 18 touchdowns this year total, which is insane to think about for Raheem Mostert. But
Yeah.
I was up 10 going into that last drive, and my buddy had Derrick Henry and D-Hop. And D-Hop makes a 40, 50-yard play, and Derrick Henry caps it off with the touchdown, and I lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I give you a couple other
nuts?
Yeah. Can I give you a couple? I want to give you a couple other candidates who could have made the bottom 3 because
that's the other thing I wanted to say was that there was a lot of teams that probably could have been put on the bottom 3, and this is
Absolutely.
the bottom 3 is very much top 3 too. Is both top and bottom 3. There was a lot of candidates for this
because this was such a crazy week. I mean, just like even the things that we haven't even talked about yet. And I wanted to get to another one. The Texans, for reasons that you really can't control, look like they're falling apart. They lost 30-6 to the Jets. CJ Stroud, for once, actually looked like a rookie quarterback. And you can see the reason why. Tank Dell's out for the year. You just lost Nico Collins in that game. Dalton Schultz wasn't active. So you were literally leaning on Noah Brown, a career wide receiver 3. If that. And, I mean, no one can succeed with that. Like we said with Mahomes, there's doing more with less, and then there's being asked to do something with absolutely nothing. And what Stroud has right now is nothing. And they may not make the playoffs anymore because of this. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that. Also, the Jaguars losing to a backup. The Browns, now they had a great performance. They deserve their spot in the top 3, but the Jaguars might make a case for a spot in the bottom 3. I mean, Trevor Lawrence did not look the same. He threw for 3 interceptions. He threw for 3 touchdowns, but 3 picks is 3 picks. He doesn't look like the same guy. And this was supposed to be the Jaguars' coming out year. It doesn't look like that because now their franchise quarterback is playing hurt, and they also don't look like the offense they should be.
Yeah.
I would say oh, sorry, CJ, you can go.
I was going to say, I have one little suggestion for bottom 3. And honestly, I like yours. I'm just saying it's someone that we could have given a look to. The Steelers. Wait, just hear me out. Yeah. A supposedly elite defense. You got 3 touchdowns put on your head by Bailey Zappi. Really?
My only
hold on. No. I'm not saying you should have put them there. It's just saying, just some food for thought. I'm not debating. It's all good in the metaphorical hood. But it's not that you lost. It's not that you lost to Bailey Zappi. It's that we were told Matt Canada is the problem. And outside of one fluke game where he left, I got some news for you. You haven't been doing much winning. And you could say, oh, but we only lost because we didn't have Kenny Pickett. Okay. Your offense wasn't even doing things with Kenny Pickett. And I will stand on business to tell you that Kenny Pickett was not going to save you in that game.
What are you, CJ Stroud?
Nah, it's just a phrase that the kids are saying. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, for the Steelers, you're still in the same rut without Matt Canada. And now the question is, well, what's really the issue? And I'll say it's the quarterback.
I've always hated the idea that there's always an issue. Like when I heard somebody told me, because I said that Mac Jones wasn't the problem, wasn't the only problem, and that Matt Patricia deserves a lot of the blame from 2022. And now that the Patriots are still playing bad, they said, "Oh, well, now I'm right, Adam, because they still suck, and so it wasn't Patricia." I said, "Well, no, there can be multiple issues. And I still don't think it's all Mac Jones, right? So like that, like even if they do discover another problem with this Steelers team, that doesn't mean it's the only one. Maybe George Pickens has a really bad attitude. Maybe Najee Harris sucks at running the ball, and he's one of the great running back busts in recent memory. Maybe Kenny Pickett is like not a very good quarterback, and those tiny hands are actually getting to him. Maybe this defense isn't as good as we thought, and also maybe they're not. Maybe they're still not playing Joey Porter Jr. as much as they should be. There's a million things that could be the issue. But this is the issue. What's the issue? What's the issue? Maybe there's more than one. Yes, Chris.
My counterpoint to this. So I have two counterpoints, one for the Steelers and one for the Jaguars. Actually, never mind on the Jaguars, because what I was going to say is that the Browns defense is a really good defense. And so there's a reason to not have the Jaguars on here, but they were also missing Myles Garrett, I think, for all of, if not most of that game. But you're probably gonna have to fact check me on that. But my counterpoint for the Steelers, though, is that they were also beat up on the defensive end, and they had Mitchell Trubisky as their quarterback. You're not going to get a lot done with Trubisky as your quarterback in general. And yeah, you shouldn't, in general, that Steelers defense shouldn't have let up 21 points to the Pats to begin with, considering that they had only scored, 9-10 points in 4 games prior to that. But I think that's also something to think about as well.
Yeah. And that's exactly my point. Like, there could be a million different problems, and there could be only one problem. We just don't know. And I always hate the argument, like, what is the issue? As if there's only one, and you can just fix a team just based off the issue. Like Patrick Mahomes, Matt Patricia was the issue. There could be multiple issues. How about the offensive line that was terrible? How about the offensive line that second time I've mentioned that? How about the wide receiver core that was terrible? How about the fact that they got nothing out of Jonnu Smith? How about their drafting? Their drafting's pretty bad. You can't always name just one issue. That's such a simplistic way of thinking that, like, what's the issue? Like, there's only one. Like it's a puzzle. You have to, there's not always just one issue. There could be a multitude of things that are going on. But there's my tech talk for the day. I do want to move on because we are up against the clock. Fanbox. This week it was, who is your offensive player of the year? So every Monday we post a question on our Instagram story every week, and you guys can respond with hot takes, questions, and more, and give you a shout out on our podcast. Respond to next week's Fanbox question to be featured on our show. So as I mentioned, question of the week was, who is your offensive player of the year so far? And we got heavy Tyreek Hill responses, but we got some others, and we'll start with Timmy Kung, who said Brock Purdy for offensive player of the year. You can make a case for that. And he's in the MVP talks. So when you're in the MVP conversation as a quarterback, you're automatically in the offensive player of the year conversation as well. So Brock Purdy's a good one. And I believe he's one of, if not the leading wide quarterbacks in touchdown passes, correct? I actually think it's Dak Prescott, but
Dak Prescott is the leader.
But Purdy's I want to say he's top 3, top 5.
Let me fact check you guys on that.
And in the meantime, Adam, keep going.
Yeah. DJ Rajan.
He's number 3.
Oh, he is number 3. Yeah, top 3.
So he's up there.
Tied for second, but
it'll be fine.
DJ Rajan said Tyreek Hill.
I feel this is going to be a theme.
And again, like I said during Chris's top 3, bottom 3, the biggest winner from that Dolphins game was not the Titans. It was Tyreek Hill improving his importance to any team. he leaves the Chiefs, they automatically fall out as one of the best offenses in all of football. Not automatically, because they had a pretty good year the next year with Juju Smith-Schuster, but we won't get into that rabbit hole. On top of that, now you can see what Tua is like with and without Tyreek Hill. It's unbelievable. If there is a year where a non-quarterback wins MVP, it's Tyreek Hill. And if he doesn't at least win Offensive Player of the Year, then there's something wrong with the voting, because this guy is killing it right now. All right. Gabe Compton said Dak Prescott, a guy who might actually end up winning MVP, and he'll be okay with not winning Offensive Player of the Year. Because, I mean, we can honestly make a case that these two categories go hand in hand, and they just don't give it to the same player. They don't give it to the same player because they don't want to give the same player two awards. That's basically it.
Yeah.
And I believe I don't have the stats or the information in front of me. Maybe it's happened before where a player has won both, but I'm sure the league doesn't want to do that because they want to spread it out a little more. All right. Our next one is, jeez. Christian McCaffrey. What's up?
I want to fact check you on the Offensive Player of the Year and MVP.
Yes.
Just looking on StatMuse, one of the last players to do it was Peyton Manning in 2013 for that record-breaking season that he had,
which is deservedly so. That was an unbelievable season. But why didn't Patrick Mahomes get it in 2018, who threw 50 touchdowns?
Adrian Peterson also did both. Brady did it twice. LT, Sean Alexander. But those years were more spread out.
Right. And those were also very historic years for those players, right? So like Adrian Peterson was, he broke 2,000 yards. So he won MVP. But when you break 2,000 yards, you have to get Offensive Player of the Year too. Same with LT. I mean, didn't he have 28 touchdowns?
28 touchdowns,
That's good for
2,300 rushing yard, or excuse me, 2,300 yards total. And even like most of these guys too, like you look at Sean Alexander, he had 1,800 rushing yards. Marshall Faulk was another one that did it. And the craziest thing for him is that most of his yards were on the ground, but he also had 830 receiving yards too, which got him to 2,200 in general. Terrell Davis, another one, Barry Sanders, but TD and Barry both had 2K rushing yards. So Tyreek Hill would have to still be on his 2,000 yard pace for him to win both if we were to make that case. Same thing with Dak.
Right.
Dak would have to have a historic season for him to win both.
Yeah.
Right. And Tom Brady broke the touchdown record with 50 touchdown passes. So he gets it.
That's the other thing about so like 2007, he broke the record for touchdown passes, but 2010 is kind of this weird like outlier year, right? So that's true. Why is Jesus Christ? So Brady in 2010 had 4,300 yards, 36 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, or actually, 3,900 yards, 36 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Not necessarily a historic year, but it was a fantastic year in terms of obviously the touchdown interception ratio, but he wasn't breaking any records. So that's kind of the one little weird outlier of it all.
Yeah. So our next response was Ian Mulhern, who said Christian McCaffrey. And McCaffrey, and you can make a case with a lot of the toys that Brock Purdy has in that San Francisco offense. I mean, it has been electric the way all of them have played. Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and when you see that they are off the field, any of them are off of the field, Brock Purdy doesn't play the same way. So you're seeing, you are seeing each one of these players are pretty valuable to this team, which is kind of the original purpose of MVP was never meant to be for the best player, the best performing guy, the guy who's most valuable to your team, which would be what Christian McCaffrey is. I mean, without McCaffrey, you don't have that safety blanket to pass underneath or to just hand the ball off to. Well, yes, Chris.
Another thing to point out for McCaffrey, he scored a touchdown in 10 of 12 games played this year.
How do you like that?
And there is a historic statistic, which could be cause to say, well, MVP and Offensive Player of the Year, besides the 2010 season for Tom Brady. But
17 touchdowns total this year for him as well.
yeah. And I'll also say you could have made a case for Tom Brady for MVP in 11 and 12 too, because he just had inflated statistics in the early 2010s, late 2000s. But we won't go down that rabbit hole. Yeah. I mean, this guy, he's on pace for 1,500 yards, and he plays a big role in the passing game as well. So this guy's a Swiss Army knife. Yeah, but if I were to name my Offensive Player of the Year, I definitely think it has to be Tyreek Hill. Like there's no reason he shouldn't win it if he gets 2,000 yards. That's something that we've never seen before from a wide receiver. Even if we have 17 games, which is I understand it's going to be a little bit inflated, but didn't Calvin Johnson, who is the previous owner of the record, didn't he win Offensive Player of the Year? Didn't Cooper Kupp also do it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true.
So if he should win this award.
Yep.
Even if he doesn't get 2K yards. All right. Any other thoughts before we end the show tonight?
Nope.
No, there was a couple other things. Dolphins just signed Melvin Ingram. Free agent Melvin Ingram.
Well, that would be great if it was 6 years ago.
Some Steelers news. NFL and NFLPA have been jointly reviewing the situation surrounding the Steelers star TJ Watt and how and when he entered the NFL's concussion protocol. Watt reported symptoms Friday morning now is in protocol. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's basically the only other story. Devin Duvernay on IR as well for the Ravens. That's basically it for news for today.
Yeah. This was just a big, crazy, unbelievable week. Just so many things. And I'm sure there's stuff when we get off air where we're just going to damn, we didn't even talk about that. For example, Jake Browning might be a pretty good quarterback, and the Bengals are still in contention. All right, that'll do it for us tonight.
Herbert officially on IR.
That too, Jesus, so much stuff. Thank you for listening to us. We have new episodes out on Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Fridays. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our TikTok at Fumblerooski Pod. We have all our episodes on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and so much more. Also, be sure to follow our Instagram at Fumblerooski_podcast to keep up with our podcast and latest coverage on the NFL. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Over and out.